I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Props in versus props out rotation. There are benefits to running your props the opposite direction from the way that Betaflight normally expects them to be. In this video, we're going to talk about what those benefits are and why, despite those benefits, I'm actually not running props out on most of my quads. Oh, and we'll also talk about how to set up props out if you want to try out some of those benefits for yourself. Stay tuned. Just so we're on the same page, let's make sure we all understand what we mean by props in versus props out rotation. In Betaflight, the standard way that the props are expected to rotate is towards the center line of the quad, inwards towards the center line. Now, it's true for a quadcopter that you must have two of the motors rotating clockwise and two rotating counterclockwise, and you must have diagonally opposing motors spinning the same direction, otherwise the yaw axis won't work. But you can see based on those constraints that there's actually two sets of motor rotations that will satisfy that constraint. You can run props in or you can run props out. At the end of this video, I'll show you how to set up props out rotation if you decide you want to take advantage of it. But let's talk about what some of those advantages are and why I'm not actually using it on most of my quads. One of the advantages of props out rotation that is absolutely true, and nobody disputes this, is that you're more likely to bounce off an obstacle in a head-on collision. So think about the quad, right? And think about the prop is rotating this way, and in a head-on collision with an obstacle, the obstacle gets sucked in and stops the prop against the arm, and the quad falls out of the sky. With props out rotation in a head-on collision, the obstacle gets pushed away, and a quad is more likely to get pushed back off the obstacle, bounce off, and keep flying. In theory, reversed props are more likely to crash in a side impact, but you're more likely to hit obstacles going head on. So racers really like props out rotation because they're far more likely to bounce off of a race gate and be able to keep flying, as opposed to sort of sucking into the race gate, getting stuck, hung up, and not being able to finish. It's also true for freestyle pilots. You're more likely, if you're flying through some scraggle, to bounce off the scraggle and the branches or kick them away and be able to keep flying. Nobody really disputes this. It's just a fact. Another difference with props in versus props out is where the dirt and grass and so forth gets thrown when you get dirt and grass, when you mow the lawn with your props. With props in rotation, when you get into some dirt or grass, it throws the grass and dirt onto the lens of your camera, and it can get really bogged up and not be able to see where you're going. With props out rotation, it throws the dirt and grass into the flight control stack instead, which makes your quadcopter a little uglier, I guess, but it doesn't get in the way of flying. So some people argue that props out rotation is better for keeping your lens clean. I don't necessarily agree with that, though, because if you think about it, the time when you are most likely to get a bunch of grass and dirt into your lens, into your props, is when the quadcopter is upside down on the ground and you're trying to turtle mode out. And when you turtle mode, your prop direction reverses. So I actually think if you're using turtle mode, which you should be using turtle mode is awesome, then you're actually going to keep your lens cleaner by running standard rotation so that when you turtle mode, you will push the dirt into the stack. And how often are you actually flying forward and cutting the grass and so forth? So I think standard rotation actually keeps the lens cleaner if you're using turtle mode. Now, there are also some aerodynamic advantages of reversed prop rotation. And one of those advantages has to do with whether the advancing blade is inward or outward. Now, this is hypothetically true. It's probably practically true, but in my opinion, the effect on quads with props this small, it's too small to really mention. I can't prove that. You'd need like a wind tunnel to prove that, but I'm just not convinced. The real advantage to handling with reversed props is the way that the yaw and the roll axis work. So if you think about it, when you're turning a quadcopter, you'll typically be rolling and yawing the same direction. And with standard prop rotation, props in, the outer rear motor is contributing to both yaw and roll. And that means that outer rear motor is going to max out sooner because it's having to affect two axes at once. And the way a quadcopter works is, as soon as any one motor maxes out, the other motors can't get any stronger or the quad will destabilize itself. So it's a case of where the weakest link in the chain slows the whole thing down. By running props out rotation, the outer rear motor is contributing to the roll axis and the inner rear motor is contributing to the yaw axis. And that means you get additional authority in a turn. The motors can spin faster in a turn without one of them maxing out and limiting authority. Now that sounds like a big deal, but it's actually not as big a deal as it sounds like, except in one case. You see, the thing is, if you look at the black box logs for a 5-inch quad, you'll see that even in very sharp turns, you don't typically max out one of the motors. So even though one of the motors is doing two jobs, it's still got plenty of authority to control the quad. The place where you really see an advantage to running props out and in additional cornering authority is in little micros like this. These little guys don't have a ton of authority, and when you've got a micro quad that is washing out in turns, and then you run props out and it fixes the washout, that's the reason why, in my opinion anyway. It's that you're splitting the roll and the yaw axis between two motors instead of making one motor do both roll and yaw and one motor just not do anything. And that gives you additional cornering authority, and that is a big deal. So who should run reversed props versus not reversed props? Well, I think anybody running a micro quadcopter, let's say from 3 inches on down, anybody running a micro quadcopter should seriously consider running reversed props. And especially if you're running one of these little 65, 75, 85 millimeter micros, these guys should always be run with reversed props. They just always benefit from it. You get less washout and just better cornering overall. I don't think that there's really any advantage for most 5-inch or maybe 4-inch, 5-inch or bigger quads when it comes to flight handling. At that point, you have to decide whether you like reverse props or not, depending on how you feel about bouncing off of obstacles versus getting dirt on your camera lens. You see, I think that reversed props out rotation is better at bouncing off obstacles, but because of turtle mode, it's worse at getting dirt on your lens. Now, personally, I run all my big quads standard rotation props in, and the reason for that is mostly laziness. You see, I'd have to convert all the quads I own at once to props out because I would forget, is this guy props in or props out? I'd change my props and the quad would flip out. I just don't want to deal with it, so I just run them all props in, and that's the end of it. The fact that it also tends to keep my lenses a little cleaner when I turtle mode, I guess that's a benefit, but I'm also a little more likely to crash when I get into some scraggle. Okay. So how do you change from props out to props in? Here's the answer. In Betaflight, you're going to go to the Configuration tab, and here in the Mixer section, you're going to choose Motor Direction is Reversed. Now, that is where some people screw up, because that does not actually reverse your motor direction. It just tells Betaflight that you have reversed your motor direction. If you stop here, then your quad will flip out when you try to fly it. So you're going to hit Motor Direction is Reversed and save and reboot. Then you're going to need to go into BL Heli Suite, assuming you're using BL Heli ESCs, and you're going to set your motor direction to reversed. So you're going to change the motor direction there in BL Heli Suite, or if you prefer to, you can just desolder the motor wires and swap any 2 of the 3 motor wires on each of the motors. That'll switch their direction. You need to see that when you spin the motors using the Motors tab, that they spin in the direction that this diagram shows. So you reverse the direction here, then you reverse the direction in the ESCs, and then you're ready to go. Oh, and then just make sure you put your props on correctly, and then you're good to go. Okay, so now you know the potential benefits of running reversed props or props out, and you know how to do it. And you may be thinking to yourself, haven't we been talking about this for a long time? And it's true, we have been. I've answered this question many times in YouTube comments and on live streams. People keep asking it, so I finally sat down to just make a video about it that I can finally point people to if they want to know my answer about reversed props. I hope that you learned something in this video about prop rotation, reversed props. If you did, and if that makes you feel like supporting the kind of content that I make, there are links in the video description to ways that you can support me. One way is by becoming a patron of mine on patreon.com, however you say it, you boneheads. You can support me at as little as $2 a month. You get access to my private Discord server if you do. You can also support me by using affiliate links, which are at the bottom of most of my videos. Not this video, because there's no products in this video, but any video of mine that has products in it, there will be affiliate links down in the video description, and you can make any purchase after clicking one of those links, not just the link to any purchase. Anytime you go shopping, click one of my affiliate links, go do your shopping, check out. I get a small commission. It's a little bit, but it does add up, and it really helps. Thank you guys so much for watching. I forgot the call to action. Hey, YouTube 101 says always put a call to action in your videos. I guess asking you to click my affiliate links is a call to action. But do you run reverse prop rotation? Tell me in the comments. Why do you run reverse prop rotation versus standard prop rotation? And if you do run reverse prop rotation, especially interested to hear if you're running it on a 5-inch quad, do you notice a big difference in the handling? I know what you notice on micros, but what about 5 inches? I haven't noticed any difference. See what you think. Let me know. Happy flying.